While Vale Festival is a great day out for everyone, when the sun's shining and there's so many activities to do, we mustn't forget that Vale Festival is here for a very important cause. Human trafficking is a massive problem, both outside of the UK, moving people into the UK, and with British people from around here. So inside the tent, there's a talk about what human trafficking is, with different participants from the various charities and other organisations to do with human trafficking. So we'll see what they have to say.
I guess for me it's pretty straightforward. It's a modern-day form of slavery. It's about treating people as commodities.
It's about making money, and it's as simple as that. It's about other human beings that are making money out of other people.
We haven't realised when we started looking at this that actually trafficking is just moving from A to B, and it can be from one street to the next street for the purpose of exploitation. So that could be sexual exploitation, domestic servitude, forced labour, or the removal of organs.
We are still seeing something like 6,000 people a year coming into this country as a result of some form of trafficking.
The majority of people think that only a certain type of person can be trafficked. Anybody can be trafficked.
I've had trafficking victims who were concert pianists, a dentist, anybody.
There's a massive amount of deception that goes on now. So people may sadly be willing participants because of the lies that they're told, but that doesn't alter the fact that they are being trafficked.
What we were seeing in the survivors was that they had been experienced coercion, violence, and abuse that in many cases was every bit as sophisticated and brutal as what we had seen in state-sponsored torture, except it wasn't happening in a far-off country with a notorious human rights record or an infamous detention center. It was happening in a North London flat or a leafy suburb of Turin. There's also a misconception that, for example, that they're liars. They tell stories, their stories aren't consistent or not credible. Think about trying to disclose the most shameful and degrading experience imaginable to a stranger, to an immigration official. How do we expect them to tell a coherent narrative?
I want to pick up on the subject of trauma, because trauma is quite interesting. There's a really good article. It's written by a lady called Kathy Zimmerman, and it's about your mind and how your mind works in a traumatic situation. When you're under trauma, what happens is your basic human survival instincts take over, as opposed to your memory and things like that. And this is where you get the complications when people are being interviewed and maybe not giving a coherent account. It's because actually that person's thinking, you know what, I've got injuries on my back where I've been beaten, I've got a massive migraine, I haven't had anything to eat for days. A victim of human trafficking will have suffered immeasurable pain, trauma. Imagine being raped 10 times a day. And that could go on for more than a year, and then someone sat in front of you asking you questions like, how did you get here? You know, how much money did you make a day? And you're thinking, you know what, I think I've got AIDS. A victim would probably take up to 90 days to fully recover before they could be properly interviewed.
Kathy says 90 days, and we're struggling to hold at a 45-day reflection period. Clinical information and understanding needs to inform the policies. And right at the moment, this is not what's happening.
At long last, this government has signed up to the Convention on Trafficking, which allows for a period of reflection. What we now need to make sure is that the government puts its money where its mouth is on that one, and to make sure that people really are treated with dignity.
There may be a misconception that there's some kind of universal expertise when it comes to trafficking, and there isn't. People don't actually recognise the signs of trafficking. Knowledge is in your hands. Do some research, do some reading, so that you can understand a lot better what's happening in terms of trafficking issues. But if you, for example, had to report an issue of trafficking, where would you go?
Drug trafficking in this country is very well understood. Human trafficking is not so well understood, but slowly and surely we'll get to the stage where we do understand it, we will prosecute the offenders, and hopefully one day the UK will be a hostile environment and the crime will stop being committed here.